With the Indigo Disk around the corner, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's second DLC, I thought it would be great to cover which of the returning Pokemon we should keep our eye on when the OU metagame begins. Keep in mind, I'm not saying these Pokemon will be amazing or broken or anything of that sort, but from the list of given Pokemon returning in this DLC, these are just the best of the bunch, and all we're doing is merely analyzing. This list is in obviously no particular order, and it's just honest speculation. Be sure to subscribe for more competitive Pokemon content just like this, as a lot of you guys watching right now are not subbed, so if you enjoy, please be sure to join along. Thank you, and let's get started. Let's get the obvious out the way and talk about Blaziken. This Firebird has been around for generations on end, tormenting players with its iconic speed boost sets throughout the years. Generation 8, however, proved to be Blaziken's first significant slippage in usage, as it stayed in the OU tier throughout its time, and even falling down to the UUBL tier, which it hasn't done since Generation 3 or Generation 4, which was prior to its hidden ability. Keeping that in mind, Power Creep is also taking another huge step forward since Generation 8, and for Blaziken, that might be actually a bad sign. In the metagame currently, there are things like Enamorous, Walking Wake, Greninja, Toxapex, etc., all who provide major drawbacks to this fantastic Pokemon. Dondozo will probably be the biggest challenge with its ridiculous bulk and its unaware ability as well. Putting that aside, we also have to make a mention of the most significant thing in this metagame, and that is the advent of hazards. Things like Stealth Rocks, Spikes, etc. have been all given 110% in viability as it currently stands in the tier, and if you wish to know why, check out this video I made about a month ago. Regardless, even learning that should tell you everything you need to know. Blaziken in turn will now have to face more hazards during competitive play, and this means more often than not, there's only a limited amount of time you can switch in and out of this Pokemon. Heavy duty boots sure is very viable for this frail bird, however the one downside with it is that you cannot hold choice items or life orb to boost its damage as it usually does, and 2 leftovers in between those protectorants aren't there anymore to recover HP. At this point, it might seem a lost cause for this Pokemon to be in the OU tier, but it still has strong positives that keep it going. For starters, no pun intended, it's also got pretty high offensives that are pretty easy to take advantage of when you look at its diverse move pool. Speed boost though is obviously its selling point, which allows it to take its middling 80 base speed and snowball it into Disasterville. Blaziken also has a new toy in this generation to mess around with, and that is Terastallization, which actually helps boost its offenses to another level, like with Terra Fire or Terra Fighting, or it could be used in a more defense manner with Terra Grass, Terra Dark, Terra Fairy, or something even like Terra Dragon. This does bring more nuance to Blaziken's kit, and if I'm being honest, I think Blaziken will settle itself in like a UU or UUBL tier kind of Pokemon. In the OU tier right now, there's a lot of potential counters, and the advent of hazards certainly don't help it, and not being min-max is starting to affect it a lot, regardless of its amazing move pool or abilities. The next one I wish to talk about is Serperior, Unovan's grass type starter, which has been around for 13 plus years. Looking on paper on its stats, this thing looks horrendous until you realize Game Freak had a big brain all along and gave this thing the hidden ability of Contrary. Ever since then, this thing's been a must-see OU staple because of its contrary Leaf Storm shenanigans. The ability to gain power after using Leaf Storm is absolutely nuts. However, Serperior hasn't been in the OU tier since its days in Generation 7, dating back almost 4 years ago. Since then, Generation 8 and Generation 9 have upskilled the level of Power Creep to a whole new level that Serperior has not tasted since. Its speed stat, which was once considered one of the best, is now in between Pokemon like Ogerpon and Iron Valiant. But I'm not that concerned about it because despite how it looks, it's actually pretty bulky on the defensive end of things. In turn, while it does need a turn to set up itself, it can risk that and still fire off a powerful Leaf Storm. Grass is not that bad of an offensive type when you look around in the tier as well. The only significant Pokemon it doesn't fare up against is like Heatran and potentially Iron Moth. Other than that though, its short move pool and just straight grass coverage actually isn't all that bad. Dragon Pulse also hits other popular dragon types, grass hits a lot of the tier, and to round up its move pool with things like Glare to paralyze the opponent is still pretty good. I think it's also good to note, at least from the outside looking in from its move pool in Generation 7, it also had Defog, so perhaps we might get another user, but probably don't hope for that. Being in Generation 9 obviously means it can take advantage of the Terastallization mechanics pretty easily, and for this Pokemon, this means everything for a couple of reasons. One, it's already semi-bulky, so you could enhance its bulk even further with things like Terra Dragon or Terra Water. 2, it does start off with lacking offensives, so you could potentially just boost its stab type with Terra Grass, or you could use it in a hybrid fashion for both offense and defense for like Terra Fire provides. Terra Fire allows it to hit other grass type Pokemon now, bug types, and more importantly, steel types like Goldango, who can switch into its grass or dragon type moves pretty easily. Terra Fire also allows it to sit comfortably against Pokemon like Heatran that could otherwise use Magma Storm that could keep it in and take residual fire damage. This offers a lot of versatility, and I think this might be one of the low usage OU Pokemon, or perhaps UUBLmon at best. Its bulk and contrary ability are still its saving grace, and it still carries it a lot, which makes it still pretty viable at this day and age. Now, there is another grass type Pokemon in the name of Rillaboom as well, who arguably could be seen as a better grass type Pokemon compared to Serperior because of its grassy terrain provides more flexibility and utility to a team, and it can also deal instantaneous damage with Choice Band Grassy Glad that still hits like a truck when it's coming from Rillaboom, although it is a bit slow and has a tough time trying to hit its other moves it wants to despite its bulk. It's a bit min-maxed on the offensive end, which is something to keep in mind. Ultimately, Serperior will have to compete with a lot in the OU tier with its counterpart Rillaboom, and not to mention other offensive options in the tier. However, in my opinion, as it stands, I think Serperior has more to gain than Blaziken heading into the Indigo Disk DLC metagame. Out of the returning Pokemon though, I think those two were the more relevant ones, but of course there's still other notable Pokemon to make mention of that may or may not be as relevant, starting off with Feraligatr. Feraligatr has been always an interesting Pokemon for its time, abusing Dragon, Sheer Force, Life Orb, and obviously its diverse move pool. Sheer Force grants more power to moves with secondary effect, and using a Life Orb actually allows to get rid of its greatest burden on users, and that is its chip damage, while still doing that 1.3 times multiplier in damage. The last time we saw Feraligatr relevant was actually in Sun and Moon, and by then it was in the UU tier. Generation 9, while it does have the terrestrialization feature, it'll be much tougher than before to make a stamp on the metagame with 2 whole generations of power creep standing in its way. But without even looking at OU, we have things like Munkidori, Meowscarada, Okidogi, Breloom, etc. all residing in the UU tier, and not to mention there's other water type offensive options like Quaquaval that will be competing with it for the better water type user. Power creep has certainly caught up to it really fast, and it's not really clear cut whether or not Feraligatr can remain in UU, let alone OU. Sure, it can Terra to fire, grass, or whatever for its defensive cover, but there are probably better Pokemon to abuse Terra with. UU, RUBL perhaps, but there's definitely no OU in the near time future. Next up, we gotta talk about Swampert. Swampert is also another significant returning UU Pokemon with its notorious water and ground type and defensive walling capabilities. I think it'll probably be back to its regular role as a bulky Stealth Rocks user, and now with the addition of terrestrialization, I think this elevates it even more into its defensive role, as it can easily Terra to grass to avoid its grass type weakness or any other thing if it has to be. Swampert will probably be competing with Gastrodon or Quagsire as the premier water and ground type Pokemon, and especially with Gastrodon as it has probably the better ability. However, just like Feraligatr, there are better offensive options in the tier, one being Mamoswine with its ice coverage and things like Ogerpon and all those mons mentioned before that can really put a number on it. Again, Gastro are in the tier, so it'll probably be able to live through that, especially since it has probably the best stats between the three, but probably the worst ability. Also, something to keep in mind of is Swampert's move pool. A lot of Pokemon's move pool have been changed in Generation 9, and especially for defensive Pokemon, this matters quite a lot, since it already doesn't have reliable recovery compared to its counterparts of Quag and Gastro. So again, we shall see where this will be in the tier, but I predict a lower usage UU Pokemon, probably fringing on the tier. Skarmory is also another returning Pokemon, but another Defog user that's probably arguably worse than Corviknight will probably be stuck in UU. However, it'll be one of the better additions as the premier Spiker and the Defog user for that tier, and it'll be back to doing what it's been doing since forever. And again, a defensive steel type Pokemon with the option to Terra gives it a boost definitely in its viability, especially on the defensive end of things.
But, you know, guys, forget all that. I'm actually more excited for our Lord and Savior Toucannon to return. This thing took a vacation in Generation 8, but it's back with vengeance with its powerful Beak Blast, and I don't care what anyone says. Blaziken, nah. Serperior, nah. But Toucannon, that's something that will devastate the OU tier and perhaps even Ubers. I mean, just look at its colorful beak and that mean-looking eyes. How much more menacing can you get? If you wish to save yourself from this bird, be sure to comment down below the bird emoji so we can spare from Toucannon's wrath.
I don't know what that was, but anyways, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of these Pokemon or any other Pokemon I failed to make a mention of. Thank you to my members for their continued support. If you wish to support me even further on these videos, be sure to join the membership, link is down below. And be sure to join the Chompy Discord, link is also in the description down below. Other than that though, thanks for watching as always, and I'll catch you in the next video. Toucannon, 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 Toucannon. Man, what am I doing, bro? This is... Alright, bro. End the video.